Welcome to Humble Ground, a podcast where the heart of agriculture meets the stories that feed the world. Behind every meal is a farmer, a rancher, and a legacy of hard work. Here, we shine a light on their journeys, their challenges, and their triumphs, because every meal has a story, and it's time we heard it.
Hey everybody, welcome to the next episode of Humble Ground. This actually is our 20th episode. Never thought I'd say that. Podcasting is kind of a thing that you have to do a lot and get consistent at it. So people continue to come back, and we've been pretty lucky. And so with the 20th episode, I wanted to do something just a little bit different. And so we've got a few clients that we do some work for that really push mental health and ag, and one of them recommended Nick, and Nick came on to talk about a pretty difficult subject, but I think it's something that definitely needs to be talked about. And so the biggest thing you can do is follow along. We're excited for what the future has in store. But without further ado, Nick, I want to say thank you so much for coming on and taking the time today.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Tell me a little bit about growing up. What's the earliest memory you grew up on the farm? Tell me a little bit about those days.
I'd say the earliest memories are just riding on the tractor with Dad. You know, being a little pipsqueak that couldn't even get up, having Dad pick me up, putting us on the tractor. You know, as we get older, getting to 4-H and we have our own bucket calf, and taking that responsibility and not living up to that responsibility sometimes, and we lose our weekly allowance because of it. But it was the foundation, I think, of, you know, what I've always kept the rest of my life, and that's hard work, my faith, and my family. You know, from getting home on the school bus, jumping on the bikes, going over to the neighbors, helping them milk, coming back, helping Dad. You know, we didn't, do a lot of traveling stuff in the summer, mostly from a financial perspective, but also we had stuff to do on the farm, and Dad really leaned on us, especially as we grew up. So, you know, we also had those fun times outside of work where Dad was constantly taking us to the lake fishing and going camping, telling stories with my uncles and my cousins. So would not replace ever where I got to grow up and how I got to grow up.
Tell us a little bit about the family. You got a few siblings.
There's a few of us. So I'm the second oldest of 7. So we've got Tony, myself, Maggie, Ben, Becca, Liz, and Josh, ranging from, I think, 14 years is the difference. So imagine trying to farm and raise 7 kids in that short time period. Not quite sure how Mom and Dad did it, with having at one time 3 of us in high school. My brother Tony being a senior and myself a junior. We ate a ton of food. And so I'm not sure how they did it, but Dad always said the reason he had a lot of kids is so he had help on the farm. So he got that.
Sure.
Now we're coming into a lot of grandkids, and so that legacy is going to continue, which is exciting.
No, that's awesome. Row crops, cattle, what'd you guys?
Yeah, we had row crops, primarily row crops, corn and beans. Dad would touch base on, he did milo one year. I think that burned him, so he never did it again. He did wheat one year, that burned him, so he never did it again. Mainly cattle. We had some hogs every now and then. Got into goats. Not sure where that came from, but he got into goats. That didn't last very long. But we did a little bit of everything. Dad was always willing to take a risk on something and try something different, right? He wasn't one that was always going to, this is how you do it, right? So you go out and you buy something. No, he's gonna tinker with it. He's gonna build his own little mousetrap that's gonna get him by.
When you grew to high school and college age, is coming back to the farm that's something that you and Tony obviously are a little bit older than me. You're a couple of years older than me. Is that something that either one of you wanted to come back, or is that, I know Ben's back now, so is that something that you all?
Yeah. First I want to just give my absolute gratitude to Ben and Josh for sticking around, and through one of the more challenging things in our life that we'll probably ever experience, they were there. Keeping things afloat and keeping Dad's legacy and really what Mom had helped build to keeping that moving. Growing up here, I didn't realize there was a world outside of here. Because you grow up here, you love it, but went off to college. I graduated from Wichita State, and I just felt like city life at that time was for me.
Sure.
I wanted to go and explore. And, Dad always told me, because I was trying to figure out where I wanted to go to college. And, he always said, home will always be here. And, that comes from a guy that was literally born on our farm. We had an old house that he grew up in. He was literally born there, never left until the day that he died. So, that was always in our blood to be around. But, I wanted to go out and see things, do things. And I saw that there were other opportunities out in the world. And I explored that. And, at the time, didn't really have the interest to come back. But certainly glad I'm here.
Yeah, no, it's awesome. It's been great to see you back and the kids in school. And I think you're right. There's always a place to call home. So the reason I'd asked you to come on is obviously you've got a different story than a lot. And it's honestly a story that probably doesn't get talked about near enough. I think as we were just talking outside. When did you first see, or when did your siblings first see that maybe Dad was going through some stuff that maybe needed some extra attention, or somebody to look in on that?
Yeah, early on, I think it really kind of started around junior high for me and my brother Tony. He was dealing with some health stuff that he couldn't, really spend a full day working anymore. So, early on, we had to take a heavy lift, learning how to drive the tractor, learning how to plant, learning how to combine, because there was limited times that he could, work. And so it was really you started to see, that level of frustration for him, that level of sadness early on in that. As we progressed into high school, clearly got, more and more, worse and worse. And, it was... As a junior and senior in high school, having to sit in the truck with your dad 11 o'clock at night because he's bawling, doesn't know what to do, he's hurting so much, struggling. The only thing that you can do is be like, Dad, I love you and we're here to do this with you. So, relatively difficult to manage that at the time. But, going off to college, being in Wichita, myself, Tony was off in college as well. Come back as frequently as we can to help. Obviously on the phone with him a lot, but things just kind of progressively, with his health. Obviously, it's a financial stress as well to not only raise 7 kids, but being a small farmer, you're going to have those really good years, but you're going to have those really bad years as well, and trying to weather that storm, and on top of it, dealing with health. Creates a really big challenge, and the stress was just insurmountable. And, as we, worked more and more, and there were times Dad was in the hospital, and he got out. This was the February before he passed away. He said, I want to get better. And he was talking about his physical health, but I think more he was talking about his mental health. He had every desire, every wish, every love to be able to work through those challenges, but they just became too much.
And you talked about the February before. So when did he pass? And is that something that you ever saw coming? Did you have, obviously you'd struggled for a long time, but did you ever think it would have got to that point?
No. I always say the reason it happened is because we didn't think it was going to happen. We know deep down in the fiber of everything that we have that Dad loved us more than anything in the world. And, we go back and we go through memories, we go through boxes that we have. And one story is my sister Becca went, I think it was an FCA camp, maybe Fellowship of Christian Athletes camp. And I think they had given out a Bible or something, some book related to that particular camp. And I think it was a decade later, we found that, and there was a note that Dad had written in there that she had never seen before, that said, "I love you. Keep God in your life always." And so that still lives on. But no, we had no idea, and in fact, it was. So he. Sorry, I'll answer your question. So he passed away November of 2010. So it's almost been 15 years. He progressively, his mental health got worse. And so, he went into a mental hospital for a period of time right during Thanksgiving, right before Thanksgiving, actually. And, through their evaluations and whatever, they basically, had him discharged, right? But it was that Monday before he passed, my wife and I living in Kansas City at the time, it was really easy and convenient for us to go see him, which we would have loved. And, that Monday that I went to go see him, that was the first time in probably, I would say at least 3-4 months that I got a smile out of him. There was color in his face. He laughed with us, cracking jokes. He prayed with us at the end. And I left there telling my wife, I was like, he's going to beat this. He's going to get better. And then it was that next weekend after Thanksgiving is when he took his life. So, there was a lot of pain that I still carry with a lot of moments like that. But, that was his way of telling me goodbye. And I'll forever hang on to that. As that moment that Dad told me goodbye, but he didn't tell me goodbye.
Sure.
Because one day we'll see each other again.
Yeah. Oh, and I've never been through it, and I hope to never. You all are such strong people, and your mother is such a strong lady. I've got to know her great over the last how many years, and you all. How hard was that after the fact, knowing that, man, the farm still has to continue. Mom, somebody's still got to take care of Mom. Like, how hard were those conversations to now think about? It's not just, hey, we've got to plan a funeral, but hey, we've got to plan the future, of the farm.
Yeah, and I was in Kansas City at the time. My brother Tony was in Iowa. I think Maggie was still in college. So, it was really left on Ben stepping up, and he did in such a tremendous way. How Mom handled it, day by day. She always told me, and she still does, you know what, it'll be okay. It'll be okay. And I think that's that level of faith and hope that we have to have, that it will be okay. Not going to be easy, but it's going to be okay. So being there for Mom, the best that I could, being, 2 hours away over the phone, coming back on the weekends, the best that I could to help with the cattle and the farming. And, but, Mom is, she likes to call herself crazy grandma. If anybody knows her, she's a fanatic with sports. But she has a special place already set for her in heaven when that time comes. Cause
Sure.
What she did for Dad during that time, what she's done for our family, what she continues to do, and really for the community. I wish I had a better answer, but I don't know how she did it. I don't know how she was able to push through that moment. The only thing I can think about is her faith and that level of hope that it will be better.
Sure. No, you and I were talking outside, and I love that you had just said the other day that whatever God leads you to do and raise awareness and things of that nature. And I think if we can do this, and even one person sees it at the right time and goes to get help. 15 years ago, I would guess there wasn't near the amount of resources maybe available as there is today. It seems like there's been a huge push in the last 3 to 5 years. I saw a statistic that males and farmers are like 3.5 times the suicide rate. Was there a lot of resources back then, or was that something that was kind of like everybody just stays quiet with their problems and figure it out on their own?
Yeah, I think with my perspective, when you're dealing with a demographic that's really proud of the work that they do, and they build everything that they have with their hands, they maintain control of everything. When you start taking away that control from a mental health perspective, or create that level of vulnerability, that's really, really hard. Being vulnerable is one of the most difficult things we can do. I think I'm sure there were resources at the time. I think, at least for me in the aftermath of him passing, I resisted. You go through stages of sadness, anger, sadness, anger, sadness, anger. And so, I kind of denied some help there for a while. But once I went and finally realized I have to talk about this, so I went and saw a therapist, and that's okay. Like, I hope people know that that's okay. And it's not going to ever get easier. But the best thing that you could do for healing is talking. And, that's where I've committed, to God when he talked to me about, if I give you any of these opportunities, will you say yes? And I said yes, because this is helping me, right? Sure. It's continuing to communicate and at least show people that it can get better. There's hope. And the best thing that we could do is talk about it and share that with each other.
Losing your dad, can't even imagine what that went through. Does it ever feel like after 15 years, like, hey, if I just would have done this, or if I just would have done that, like, I would assume through the healing process that there was a lot of those thoughts going through your head. Yeah. And it's not, but I think you're right. It's not your fault. It's not your mom's fault. It's nothing. Like, I think the environment he was in is just a really hard thing that most farmers just want to put their head down and they want to do the work and they don't want to talk about it.
Yeah. It's certainly not something that you can outwork, from a mental health perspective. So, it's really difficult to ask for help, especially a farmer. I would say, because our neighbors, Dad would never ask for help, but they offered up help anyway. And Dad would do the same. We all would.
Sure.
But when it comes to our own, personal, emotions, our own personal needs, it's very difficult to ask for help. So getting to that place is really, really hard to do. I would say, would I have done things different? Absolutely. I don't know if that would have affected anything.
Sure.
But, there's still, to this day, driving here today to have this conversation with you, I think back of like, why did I do that in that moment? One of the last moments, that, I had with Dad, why did I do those things? We only know what we know at the time.
Sure. And
stress certainly overcomes a lot of reason. And so, I look back and I loved him with everything that I had. It maybe didn't come out the right way. I've certainly grown, as a man and as a father, and now I understand what he was going through when it comes to raising kids and managing that, and trying to be a good father for your family and to be a good husband. But I always say I don't want to shoulda, coulda, woulda myself, right? Because we could do that till we're blue in the face. It wasn't until really kind of the turning point for me, honestly, in healing was the first time I went back to confession. And this was probably 2015 or so about 10 years. There's that moment that I was finally able to forgive myself, and any additional stress that I maybe had given Dad, that certainly wasn't intentional, or, maybe I could have come home another weekend. Maybe I could have called him one more time. So really the healing for me started when I really forgave myself. Because I think if we can forgive ourselves, forgive others, and bring a smile to a conversation, that's going to change everything.
We've got a lot of people that listen to this that are farmers or ranchers, and we've got a lot of people that listen that probably just are interested in farming and ranching, whether that be whatever that is. If somebody's listening right now and they were going through, like right now, honestly, is not a great time to be farming, especially for the small ones where money's going to get tight and interest is high and equipment, like, what would you say to somebody right now that's struggling?
I would say whatever faith that you have, don't lose sight of that faith. I would say you have to pray. You have to engage in that. You have to ask for help. You also need the help of the community, because your time is coming, right? In terms of, if you want to get into farming, right, you got to have that patience and that understanding, but you got to be able to talk to people. And, I travel a decent amount for work myself, and I was on the plane, and the lady next to me, we just got to talking, and I through various conversations, I mentioned my dad had passed away, and she told her to me, and she's like, "Well, I'm so sorry, I shouldn't have brought that up." I'm like, "It's okay, because we have to be able to talk about it, and if things are hard, ask for help. That's one of the reasons I moved back, right? One of the many reasons, but it is, the proverbial, it takes a village. Well, this is a really big family back here. Nemaw County is a really special place. And that's, to me, how we survive, as a human race, especially, when we're struggling with mental health, is just have a conversation. It doesn't have to be the difficult side, but reach out and say hello. Reach out and say, I love you. Reach out and offer help wherever you can.
Sure. No, a couple more questions. And again, I can't thank you enough for, as we said, it's going to be a difficult conversation, but I think one that if just the one person hears this, right, it's worth it down the line. Speaking of community, everybody talks about if in Nemaha specifically or Northeast Kansas, man, if somebody has a health problem, right, people are more than willing to come help, or we do a ton of fundraisers. I think you would find the same, that if somebody said, hey, like, I've got to take some time away from the farm and really work on myself, I don't think anybody's going to judge you for that. But I think there's this stigma in ag that, man, I don't want anybody to know, what I'm going through at home. Would you agree with that? Like, did that become apparent to you that your dad was just like, I want to keep these, my stuff to myself?
Absolutely. Because I think, again, my perspective, if I put myself in someone's shoes like that, it's like, I feel like I'm a failure if I ask for that help. I'm here to be my own farmer and do my own things and make my own decisions, but I can't do those things without the help of somebody. I think there's that sense of, they're not accomplishing what they're supposed to do. But that's furthest from the truth. And one of the greatest gifts that you can give somebody is allowing them to help you. And I think if we keep that in our minds, I think we don't have to do it alone. That's the whole thing. And we're not meant to be isolated. That's another thing that's, if you talk about, the accelerated rates of suicide within farmers, I mean, this is a population that oftentimes they're in the tractor by themselves every day, all day. And, that isolation can sometimes make its toll, but we can't be in isolation. So if you have the ability to offer the opportunity for someone to help you, let them do it, because that's the best feeling in the world, is to help somebody and to serve.
Yeah, no, and I'll link a couple of organizations that we work with that are specifically in ag mental health and doing a phenomenal job. We're grateful to know them. How's things today at the farm? Obviously, you moved back to be closer to home. I get to see Josh and Ben quite a bit.
Yeah.
How's things today, and what's the future look like for you all? Obviously, grandkids and
yeah, grandkids. We moved back to the farm. Myself, we had some cattle this year, and my wife calls me a country club cowboy. Don't let the boots fool you, because I'm not a real one.
That's not very nice.
I still like golfing, right?
But you grew up on a farm, so
grew up on a farm.
I'm telling you, you got to pass. Yeah.
One of the best things that I can do in my day is going to go help work with cattle or help out in the field. But Ben is, taking off in agriculture and doing a great job, and Josh is doing the same as well. And the family farm is there, and I think it will hopefully always be there. And so we'll always have that legacy that's going to live, hopefully for generations.
Yeah. Last thing, I would assume the family's become a lot tighter over the years, and realize that families. There isn't anything more important than family and faith, at least in my opinion. It seems like you would agree with that. How has this last 15 years been, and do you all feel like just this crazy bond now, post that event?
Yeah,
I guess?
I mean, if you know our family, we aren't the warm, fuzzy type that's going to hug and kiss each other at every sight, but we love each other dearly, and I'll give all credit back to Mom and being that glue, and making sure that we all still had each other and that we were able to lean on each other. There's really two paths, there were two paths, in the aftermath of that. It was grow further away and angry, or come closer together and love each other and support each other. And thankfully, through the grace of God and through Mom and her wisdom, led us down that right path.
Oh, and I bet your dad is incredibly proud and incredibly, I can't even imagine.
Yeah.
You all are great people. Is there anything you'd like to end on and let people know? I know we've covered a lot of stuff, but anything you'd like? No,
I mean, the only thing I would share, I kind of said it already, is I would just encourage people to forgive yourselves, forgive others, and to smile. We've actually, through the STEP Foundation, we're working on setting up an endowment fund
Awesome.
at the moment for those that are struggling with mental health and need additional services, whether that's activity-based, medical-based, or financially based. So I'll have to share a quick story too. The name, it's kind of funny. No one's going to understand it, so I'm going to have to try and do the best I can to explain it. The name of the fund, we're probably going to call it, is Grease for the Merry-Go-Round. And that was one thing Dad always said when we were younger. He would go to leave somewhere and we'd be like, "Where are you going?" He's like, "I'm going to go get grease for the merry-go-round." And we'd turn and look, we're like, "We don't have a merry-go-round." And so, if you know my dad, he was always quick-witted, always humorous, always having fun. And so we thought that was a pretty good name for it. And the symbolism is that merry-go-round, in order for that to work properly, it's got to have grease. If there's not grease, it's going to be a bumpy ride. And so, hopefully through, generous donations and the work that, we can do, we can smooth out the rough parts of someone's life if they have to go through something like this.
Oh, that's incredible, man. I look forward to it, and we'll gladly share it and do whatever we can to help that as well. Well, I just want to tell you thank you so much, man. I know it was, like I said, a difficult conversation, but I think this is going to be a powerful one, and can't thank you enough. For everybody listening, please like, subscribe, share this with your friends, because, again, you never know what person might be listening, and we'll catch you next time.